In May 1960, the hanging room at Wandsworth Prison was being made ready for an execution. A member of one of London's most notorious crime families was thought certain to hang for the shooting of a nightclub barman. But 28-year-old Jimmy Nash defied certainty to escape the rope and taught the underworld how to get away with murder.
He'd walked into the Old Bailey facing being hung for murder. That was what he was facing, purely and simply. And instead of that, he walked out of the dock with a 5-year sentence for causing grievous bodily harm on a dead man.
Jimmy Nash was no ordinary defendant. One of 6 brothers from an Islington family of gamblers, club owners and thieves. They were the most powerful firm of criminals in London.
The Nashes were a little bit different to most other firms. They were respected all over. And you can say there was fear. There wasn't really fear from people that knew them, because they knew they weren't liberty takers. But there was tremendous respect, because they wouldn't buckle down to anyone. They'd never let a friend down. They're the most loyal people you've ever met. Everyone rallied around Jimmy. No one wanted to see Jimmy get found guilty of a murder charge where he could have got hung.
The police file is still open because to this day nobody's been convicted of the murder. It took place in the same East End street where Jack the Ripper claimed his last victim. The scene of the crime was an illegal East End drinking club.
Well, the Pen Club was a squalid, dirty drinking club in Duval Street, and it was bought by 2 gangsters. The clientele were mainly criminal. The things that went on were the setting up of jobs, i.e. burglaries, robberies, call it whatever you will. That was what they foregathered for, and also to spend their ill-gotten gains after hours.
Selwyn Cooney was the barman in this den of thieves. He shared the job with Fay Sadler, a shoplifter and gangster's mole. Cooney had had an accident in his car involving one of the Nash brothers, who came off worst in the fight that followed. In the underworld, this meant retaliation was inevitable. On February 8th, 1960, at about midnight, Jimmy Nash and 2 other men arrived in the club. The police insist Nash had a gun. Publicly, he has always denied it.
As soon as these people walked into the club, the fracas started. A man called Billy Ambrose tried to step in, got between Nash and Cooney, and was promptly shot in the stomach. Nash then promptly and coolly shot Cooney. Shot him in the head. Cooney, in spite of what some people believe or have heard, did not give chase to Nash. He couldn't. He took 1 step forward, fell over a television set and died. The bullet was completely lodged in his brain.
Everyone spilled out of the club in a panic, and the police were called. Almost immediately they had 3 witnesses who said they could identify the gunman. Ambulance men found Cooney's body dumped in the gutter. Fay Sadler was initially cooperative, but she decided the underworld's code of silence was more important than justice for her dead friend. She told the Daily Express she would never grass and went abroad to avoid giving evidence. To men like Mickey Bloom, there's no doubt that Fay Sadler did the right thing. He's a staunch supporter of the Nashes.
If people knew of people that were going to give evidence against Jimmy Nash, or going to say, of course they'd be warned, you know, and be told they shouldn't do it, because that was the code. That's what they were supposed to do. Things happen, people get hurt, people die. All right, you know, no one likes to see someone die, but these things happen. I mean, the guy, whoever it was done him, whoever it was, he asked for it. He asked originally to get a right-hander from Jim. He asked for it. And so what happened to him, you know, I've got no remorse about that at all.
Bert Wickstead was a detective sergeant on the Pen Club case and went on to become one of Scotland Yard's top gang-busting detectives. He investigated 39 murders and reached the rank of commander. He was known as the Old Grey Fox.
This, I suppose you could say, is the end product to everything. The manhunt. And I'll tell you, there's nothing quite like a manhunt when you've got the real thing and you've got your murderer or whoever it is, you put them in there. And the next step to there is their prison sentence. Gives you a good feeling.
But there was no joy for the police in the Pen Club case. The first Old Bailey trial was stopped by the judge amid charges of jury nobbling. When the retrial began, 2 key prosecution witnesses had been attacked and slashed in the face. This was one of the first trials where witnesses and jurors received police protection. Despite this, the judge complained that witnesses were too scared to tell the truth. The underworld had been at work.
Never mind a murder case, in any sort of case. If we could help them, we'd help them. It was us against them. We didn't follow society's rules, did we? We had our own rules. And people in the straight world don't understand. It's respect. It's not fear or threatening or nobbling or anything else. It's respect. People respected it.
There were all sorts of things going on at these trials, from attempted subversion of jurors to absolute intimidation of witnesses outside the court by these gangsters.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth. I tried to follow someone on the bus. You know, just to say, look, he's my mate, and he didn't do it. But I never ever got near them. I don't think anyone else did either. The police really made a big thing out of nothing.
The events that led up to Cooney's death and formed the subsequent trial for murder typified the underworld's warped idea of justice. Reasonable doubt was sown into the jury's mind, and Jimmy Nash was acquitted of firing the fatal shot. He got 5 years for breaking Cooney's nose and escaped the noose.
Oh, we were shocked. Couldn't believe it. I can't believe it to this day, on the evidence as given to that court. After he went to prison, the Nashes just disappeared. Their reputation faded. They didn't come into any real big inquiries. And they had dropped all pretense of we are the bosses of London's underworld. Perhaps they'd been persuaded by the emergence of other gangs such as the Crays and the Richardsons and the Callahans from South London. They were all milling around.
In 60s gangland, the north-south divide was created by the River Thames. The Nashes were true sons of North London, where the big names in the underworld were fighters and hard men. But south of the river, villains had a more business-like approach to crime. Raised in the local criminal tradition of the dodgy deal and the con trick, they were out to make money. Charlie and Eddie Richardson were 2 Lambeth boys who ran their own company when they were still in their teens. Charlie had the business brain.
And I was buying the scrap metal from various businesses, and within a year I was in a fairly big business. By the time I was 20 years of age, it was a very well-established company.
From a humble start, Charlie Richardson built a thriving business out of other people's scrap and rags. He was soon running 6 yards across south-east London. But the profits from scrap alone were never enough for him. The yards became a front for a criminal empire of fraud and violence, which eventually boasted mining interests in South Africa and an office in Park Lane.
I mean, he was a shrewd businessman, there's no doubt about it. He ploughed money back into the scrapyard all the time. I mean, that bloke had a fantastic brain for buying and selling you. There's no one that could touch him. And, you know, he had a lot of government contracts which through the back door, backhanders and things like that.
Johnny Bradbury was a trusted lieutenant and childhood friend of Charlie's. He saw the Richardsons' firm prosper in London's post-war development boom. It was the ideal climate for a shady dealer. Contracts were agreed with a handshake. Bad debts were settled with a right-hander. But with Charlie, it went further.
And I mean, if you wanted something, we went to see Charlie about it. If you wanted someone straightened up, you went to see Charlie about it. It wasn't a gang as, like the mafia or something like that, you know. I mean, if I called you, Frank, and I couldn't get no joy, and you live in South London, I'd go and see Charlie and say, look, Charlie, I'll give you so much out of it, just get my money back, you know, and here, take it over from there.
To help him straighten things out, Charlie recruited a man whose reputation alone was enough to promote the Richardsons into the first division of crime. To this day, throughout the underworld, Mad Frankie Fraser is respected, and that means feared.
He was a very strong principled man, not the same principles as the straight world knows, but principles that we understood, that we all hoped to achieve. A very powerful man, a fearless man, and obviously when he went with the Richardsons, you know, it was like China getting the atom bomb. They were already a tasty firm, but him being with them, and he was a big deterrent against anyone else interfering with them, whether it be the Twins or other South London firms.
Frankie Fraser joined the Richardsons straight from jail in 1962. He'd been captured at Heathrow Airport 7 years earlier and imprisoned for his part in a revenge attack on a London gangster. At the time, Fraser was a henchman for London underworld boss Billy Hill. When Hill fell out with his former gangland partner Jack Spot, each began plotting to kill the other. Fraser led a street attack on Spot to teach him a lesson.
I just whacked him with a shillelagh and times, and someone else cut him, and that was that.
If you'd had a knife that night,
what
what would you have done?
I'd have killed him. I think I would have done, yes, because I think he deserved it.
Were you feared?
Yes. Well, I don't think so, but this is what people have told me.
So what was it in you that instilled that fear?
Either you're born with it or I don't know. There's something there about you. Something that you're not in control of. It's natural, it's there. That's all I can say.
With Fraser on board, the Richardsons had the might to do as they pleased. As Charlie's business expanded, he had the edge over his competitors in another way too. The scrap business had brought him into contact with corrupt policemen. Sergeants he bribed to ignore a load of church roof lead in the 50s had been promoted, and Charlie kept in touch.
Commanders at Scotland Yard, at one time they was lowly sergeants. If we didn't pay these people money, my customers had all kind of harassment. My premises were searched, and I mean, it's a strong form of black bill and it had to be paid. Everybody else paid the police off, every other metal merchant. If I didn't pay them off, I'd have been in a very vulnerable position.
But Charlie was never reluctant to pay the police. He knew it was a worthwhile investment. After policemen had visited his office, charges would be forgotten.
That was how it was. We just could not put a foot wrong. No matter what police station you went to, there was always someone that our local police station knew who could contact someone there and straighten the things out. We'd tell him what it was for, and he'd go and do it. He'd come back and say, all right, Johnny, £50 for me, they want £150.